Well, joining me now in the studio is Gulnur Aybet. She is a professor and the head of the Department of Political Science at Bahcesehir University in Istanbul, and Ahmet, Yukleyen, a political analyst at the Centre of Politics and Social Studies. Welcome to you both. I suppose it's a rather futile question, but I'll start with you, Ahmet. Are you surprised?
Well, I think many people have not guessed that, these kinds of results. So I think, yes, like many others, I've been surprised, of course.
Did you think we were headed for another sort of coalition?
Most polls actually have shown that. I mean, if you look at the polls, the highest that has shown for AK Party was about like 47%. So in many ways, a lot of the mainstream polls were showing about 42, 43. So most of them were saying, yes, a coalition will form after the elections.
Gulnur, why do you think the vote has been so strong? Why have we managed to secure effectively a single party rule?
I think the critical regions, the election regions, were really key to this, but also the Kurdish areas as well. So there's two things there. And the critical areas, I think the marginal seats were probably won back because people generally wanted to vote for stability, and they could actually tangibly see that forming a coalition was going to be difficult, given that how difficult it was in the interim period. So I think people wanted to vote for stability as well as the AK Party's track record. I mean, you look at the manifestos and all the parties have actually promised more tangible things than previously, except the MHP. I think they had a much more murky manifesto than the others. But there's also been a recent study by a Turkish university about how the percentage of electoral promises being fulfilled. And the findings were interesting because it looks at a period from 1983 to 2012, which is a very long period. And during that time, 60% of electoral promises were not fulfilled. But the AK Party alone have fulfilled more electoral promises, according to this study, than that whole spectrum of years of all the other parties. So I think, with manifestos, there's also the track record, which this study clearly shows, that also makes people think, okay, fair enough, I mean, there might be flaws here and there, but in order to get things done, we need a single party government. We need a party that can actually deliver most than others. And I think people probably made up their minds on that basis. But with the East, I think the HDP has also been very disappointing. And people have been talking to people in the region, and there's been this general disappointment with both the AK Party and the HDP.
Well, I want to bring in Ahmet on this. So the HDP, lots of people have said, they sort of scaled back their campaigning strategy straight after the bombings, which was a sort of short-sighted, shall we say, in their approach to the elections coming up.
Retrospectively.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, they are the story actually of the night. I mean, we talk about the AK Party having a landslide majority, but in fact, the HDP, for me, I think, is the story of the night, because if they don't manage to secure that 10% threshold, those seats are going to be dissolved amongst the other three parties. And that could change things depending on whether the AK Party get that 330 seat number in order to call a presidential-led republic.
All right. Well, first of all, yes, you're right. If indeed HDP party does not get this over this 10% threshold, that would really be the biggest surprise of all, and we'll be talking a lot about the implications of this. For one thing, what about bringing these old debates back, such as changing into a presidential system, and whether that could be changed through a constitutional reform. If indeed AK Party gets more than 330 MPs, then they could actually take this to a referendum. So all of these possibilities are out there. I think the big picture here is HDP party and AK Party, in some sense, have, if you look at the bigger picture, beyond all these kind of short-term political kind of debates and clashing interests, they both want the Kurdish resolution process. Now, they have different stakes in it, and they have different kind of strategies of how to accomplish this. But I think, in some sense, if you look at this whole thing, single party government and an HDP party that's in the parliament could actually get this whole process to get started again. And if you look at what the AK Party representatives were saying before the elections too, they were saying, well, they were not saying we have given up on the whole process altogether. They were saying, yes, we'll bring it back in once the conditions come back. And I think, and I hope, HDP leaders have also gotten a lesson out of this, saying, well, maybe we should have made a stronger stance against terrorism, and that has cost us a lot of votes.
So we've talked about what's happening in country. Let's look at what's happening outside of the country. The international community are going to be looking at Turkey. They now have a single party, which some would say may sort of equate to stability. Turkey stepped up its aggressive stance towards the fight against ISIS by allowing US Air Force to use their air bases. They've also carried out coalition strikes. Turkey definitely wants to be seen as a superpower and has been sort of trying to accelerate its EU accession as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the superpower, maybe a stronger regional actor, a very strong regional actor is more appropriate. Yes, they definitely want to be an actor in the region that has a say in a region that's transforming so rapidly, especially when you have, two de facto failed states on its border. I mean, Iraq isn't yet, but Syria is, and Iraq is very fragmented at the moment. So. And I think if there's going to be a post-settlement Syria, and it looks like there seems to be an indication of that from the West after the refugee crisis hitting Europe so badly. But of course, Russia coming into the theater of war makes that more complicated. But despite that, there is some kind of movement towards fine-tuning the interests of the key countries. And of course, we saw this last Friday with the Vienna talks, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Russia, and the United States. And we can clearly see that Turkey is a key player here. And I think, the Vienna talks will be different from Geneva in the sense that if you can fine-tune the interests of those four countries and Iran, then you'll find a way forward, which is easier said than done. But I think, Turkey has a crucial player there. And I think, with a single-party government, it's going to be a lot more easier to deal with exactly how Turkey wants to play this out. Now, they're very determined in the fight against terror, and they've made that very clear in their election manifesto as well. So it's not just the fight against the PKK, but also the fight against ISIS. They see it as a two-pronged approach. So they're not going to give up one or the either. And they are working very closely with the Americans. And obviously, the use of incirlik is crucial in all of this. So I think, if you can find fine-tuning among the regional actors here, and Turkey is obviously a very important one, then there's going to be a way forward. And I think a single-party government makes all of that, which is currently complicated, slightly easier.
Okay, both of you, thank you.